Hello, and welcome back to the EquiHerbal podcast, where we discuss all things herbs and horses to help you and your horse live a happy, healthier life naturally. I have been in the process of moving over the past month, and I didn't want to put out subpar information. So if you are still tuning in, thank you, and I will get back on track with regularly releasing new episodes. I am Kayla Dendy, your master herbalist, and today I will be discussing Barberry, an herb sometimes confused with bayberry and bilberry, two herbs that will be the subject of later podcasts. As always, please speak with your doctor or veterinarian before utilizing herbs or alternative medicine. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended or designed to be a substitute for qualified medical advice. Introduction. Latin name: Berberis vulgaris. Similar species: Berberis canadensis, American barberry; Berberis aristate, Indian barberry; European barberry. The plant is also known as jaundiceberry and pepperidge bush. Plant description. Barberry is a native to Europe, but has been naturalized over Asia and the United States. The common barberry, a well-known bushy shrub with pale green deciduous leaves, is found in copses and hedges in some parts of England, though a doubtful native in Scotland and Ireland. It is generally distributed over the greater part of Europe, northern Africa, and temperate Asia. As an ornamental shrub, it is fairly common in gardens. The leaves of the barren shoots of the year are alternate, 1 to 1.2 inches long, shortly petioled, presenting various gradations from leaves into spines, into which they become transformed in the succeeding year. The primary leaves on the woody shoots are reduced to the 3 forked spines, with an enlarged base. The secondary leaves are in fascicles from the axil of these spines and are simple, oval, tapering at the base into a short footstalk. The margins finely serrate, with the teeth terminating in small spines. The flowers are small, pale yellow, arranged in pendulous racemes, produced from the fascicles of leaves towards the ends of the branches. Their scent is not altogether agreeable when near, but by no means offensive at a distance. Their stamens show remarkable sensibility when touched, springing and taking a position closely applied to the pistil. Insects of various kinds are exceedingly fond of the barberry flower. When bees in search of honey touch the filaments, they spring from the petal and strike the anther against the stigma, thereby exploding the pollen. In the original position of the stamens, lying on the concavity of the petals, they are sheltered from rain, and there remain until some insect unavoidably touches them. As it is chiefly in fine, sunny weather that insects are on the wing, the pollen is also in such weather most fit for the purpose of impregnation, hence this curious contrivance of nature for fertilizing the seeds at the most suitable moment. The berries are about 1-2 inch long, oblong and slightly curved. When ripe, of a fine red color and pleasantly acidulous. Cows, sheep, and goats are said to eat the shrub, horses and swine to refuse it, and birds also seldom touch the fruit on account of its acidity. The leaves are also acid and have sometimes been employed for the same purposes as the fruit. Sister plants. Oregon grape is a sister plant to barberry and is very similar in chemical composition and therapeutic action, but barberry is slightly superior in that it carries a somewhat higher percentage of berberine. But where barberry acts with greater speed and effectiveness upon the liver, stomach, and digestive organs, the wild Oregon grape acts more favorably and is more reliable in scorbutic and syphilitic problems. Parts used: root, bark of the root, bark of the stem, and berries. The stem bark is collected by shaving and is dried, spread out in trays in the sun or on shelves in a well-ventilated greenhouse or in an airy attic or loft, warmed either by the sun or by the artificial heat of a stove, the door and window being left open by day to ensure a warm current of air. The bark may also be strung on threads and hung across the room. When dried, the pieces of bark are in small, irregular portions, about 2 inches long and 1.2 inch wide, and of a dark yellowish gray color externally, and marked with shallow longitudinal furrows. The bark is dark yellowish brown on the inner surface, separating in layers of bast fibers. The bark has a slight odor and a bitter taste, and colors the saliva yellow when chewed. The root bark is grayish-brown externally and is dried in a similar manner after being peeled off. When dry, it breaks with a short fracture. It contains the same constituents as the stem bark and possesses similar qualities. History. Barberry has a long history of use that goes back to ancient Egypt. They mixed it with fennel seed to prevent the plague. The Egyptians are said to have employed a diluted juice of the berries in pestilential fevers. Berberis is the Arabic name of the fruit, signifying a shell, and many authors believe the name is derived from this word because the leaves are glossy, like the inside of an oyster shell. Among the Italians, the barberry bears the name of holy thorn because it is thought to have formed part of the crown of thorns made for Jesus Christ. The barberry used to be cultivated for the sake of the fruit, which was pickled and used for garnishing dishes. The ripe berries can be made into an agreeable, refreshing jelly by boiling them with an equal weight of fine sugar to a proper consistency and then straining it. They were formerly used as a sweetmeat and in sugar plums or comfits. It is from these berries that the delicious confitures de pinvinette, for which Rouen is famous, are commonly prepared. The roots, boiled in lye, will dye wool yellow, and in Poland they dye leather of a beautiful yellow color, with the bark of the root. The inner bark of the stems will also dye linen of a fine yellow, with the assistance of alum. Provincially, the plant is also termed piperage bush, from pepon, a pip, and a rouge, red, as descriptive of the scarlet juiceless fruit. Native American Micmac, Mohegan, and Penobscot tribes found the bark and root useful for stomatitis and sore throat. The berries were used for fever. Barberry is considered a bitter tonic and is used for chronic diarrhea and jaundice due to a congested state of the liver. Herbalists consider barberry a cholagogue that is useful for gallstones and cholecystitis. Specific indications include biliary disease and gastritis. The berries are astringent and are used for fever, diarrhea, and stomatitis. Constituents. The bark contains isoquinoline alkaloids such as berberine, chelidonic acid, and resin. The berries contain malic acid. Barberry contains an alkaloid called berberine, which dilates blood vessels, thereby lowering blood pressure. Berberine is a strong antiseptic. It is a stimulant on the myocardium and intestinal smooth muscle. If taken excessively, it may cause depression. It is also known to exhibit effects on respiration. Berberine reduces bronchial constriction, while it is also a mild anesthetic. It also works to care for the mucous membranes. Beyond berberine, the plant also contains oxyacanthine, berbamine, other alkaloidal matter, a little tannin, also wax, resin, fat, albumin, gum, and starch. The berries contain citric and malic acids and possess astringent and anti-scorbutic properties. They are useful in inflammatory fevers, especially typhus, also in bilious disorders and scurvy, and in the form of a jelly are very refreshing in irritable sore throat, for which also a syrup of barberries made with water proves an excellent astringent gargle. Clinical uses. Barberry has uses as a bitter tonic, cholagogue, alterative, anti-diarrheal, antibacterial, antifungal, antiprotozoal, and diuretic. Barberry is indicated in cases of biliary catarrh with constipation and jaundice, gastritis, biliousness, debility during convalescence, ulcerative stomatitis, and eczema. Physicians have found barberry to be effective in cases of jaundice. Barberry increases the secretion of bile, eliminating stress on the liver that is contaminated by impure blood. Barberry is one of the best medicinal plants in the Americas. Barberry helps to strengthen the body and is a system invigorator. The plant works to increase bowel function, thus stimulating appetite and promoting bile secretion. It is claimed to have no equal in normalizing liver secretions. Barberry alleviates anemia and general malnutrition. Barberry will reduce inflammation of the spleen caused by irritations due to contaminated blood and is effective at loosening obstructions in the intestinal tract. Barberry exhibits superior stimulatory effects when used with cayenne, which is frequently used compound in mixtures. Barberry soothes and works to heal sore throats when used as a gargle and mouthwash. This is due to its astringent and antibacterial properties. Research. Most of the clinical studies related to barberry actually use other species of berberis, yet almost all concentrate on the common alkaloids, and in particular berberine, as the most interesting component. Animal studies show that the ethanol extract of the root is anti-inflammatory, suppresses carrageenan and zymosan-induced paw edema, and shows benefit in a rheumatoid arthritis model. The isolated alkaloid, berberine, is one of the best-studied herbal extracts known. Berberine has been shown, among other things, to inhibit intestinal fluid accumulation, ion secretion, and smooth muscle contraction, reduce inflammation, suppress bacterial enterotoxin formation, inhibit malarial infection, inhibit platelet aggregation, stimulate bile and bilirubin secretion, and inhibit ventricular tachyarrhythmia. Recent clinical reports and clinical trials suggest that berberine administration may improve survival in human cardiac patients. It has cyclooxygenase, COX2, mediated anti-inflammatory activity that may be of use in the treatment of patients with certain cancers. The alkaloid berberine showed strong nematocidal activity against Taxicara canis in vitro. It was found that 1% berberine sulfate inoculated intralesionally on 4 occasions at weekly intervals was highly effective against cutaneous leishmaniasis in domestic dogs. Bolus and infusion of berberine in 18 dogs with ischemic left ventricular failure showed that berberine improved impaired left ventricular function through its positive inotropic effects and mild systemic vasodilation. Berberine hypochlorite as an intrauterine preparation was given every second day over a 9-day period in cows with second-degree endometritis. A cure rate of 52% was compared with 81% prednisolone and chlorpheniramine malate. Although the actions of one important constituent are of interest, whole plants are appreciated by herbalists for their spectra of effects, and barberry provides one of the best-studied examples of plant synergy. Sturmitz discovered a multiple drug resistance pump inhibitor that enhanced the plant's ability to kill Staphylococcus aureus by bypassing the bacterial strategy for drug resistance. The combination of the antibiotic berberine and the drug resistance pump inhibitor provides an example of additive action and possibly synergy within a plant. Herb-drug interactions. Some conservative sources suggest that berberine-containing herbs should be used cautiously with many drug types, including alpha-adrenergic agonists, antiarrhythmics, anticoagulants, antihypertensives, central nervous system depressants, cyclophosphamide, cardiac glycosides, general anesthetics, monoamine oxidase inhibitors, drugs that may cause photosensitivity, tetracyclines, and other antibiotics. The true risk of interaction with these drugs is unknown. Veterinary uses. Indian barberry is used for the treatment of patients with diarrhea and for repeat estrus in cows and buffalo, as well as for kidney stones. The leaf and stem are used for ocular conditions in ruminants and pigs. Although not proven, I would be inclined to utilize the plant for cases of equine protozoal myelitis due to barberry's antiprotozoal nature and its use as a blood cleanser. Barberry is utilized in veterinary medicine in cases of gastritis, enteritis, dysbiosis, cholecystitis, hepatitis, stomatitis, giardia, endometritis, left ventricular heart failure, and leishmaniasis. Cautions. Barberry should not be used in pregnancy unless recommended by a qualified practitioner. Barberry is perfectly harmless, even in large doses, but should not be given to the point of producing diarrhea. Berberine in overdoses, and this includes barberry and Oregon grapefruit, is said to produce feverishness, inflammation of the mucous membranes from the throat to the intestines, and dysentery. It causes a high degree of inflammation of the kidneys with hematuria. It seems to act with much force upon the venous system, causing pelvic engorgements and hemorrhoids. However, if the herb is used prudently, no such reactions should occur. The herb is perfectly safe to use. Thank you for joining me for today's discussion on barberry. I hope you found it interesting and learned a little bit about just how wonderful this herb is and its various uses. Next week, I will discuss bayberry. I hope you take time to tune in next week for that discussion. As always, this podcast is for educational purposes only. The information contained in this podcast is not intended or designed to treat, cure, or prevent any illness or disease. This podcast is not designed as a substitute for advice from your medical provider, veterinarian, or other qualified healthcare professional.